Welcome to the first episode of Reading Declassified Files. This file is titled, Now You See It, Now You Don't. Written by Captain Henry S. Shields, HQ USAFE/INOMP. This document can be found on the UFO Documents Index at nsa.gov. A link is in the description below. Sometime in his career, each pilot can expect to encounter strange, unusual happenings which will never be adequately or entirely explained by logic or subsequent investigation. The following article recounts just such an episode, as reported by two F-4 Phantom crews of the Imperial Iranian Air Force during late 1976. No additional information or explanation of these strange events has been forthcoming. The story will be filed away and probably forgotten, but it makes interesting and possibly disturbing reading. Unit 0030 on a clear autumn morning. It has been an entirely routine night watch for the Imperial Iranian Air Force's command post in the Tehran region. In quick succession, 4 calls arrived from one of the city's suburbs reporting a series of strange airborne objects. These unidentified flying objects, UFOs, were described as bird-like, or as brightly lit helicopters, although none were airborne at the time. Unable to convince the callers that they were only seeing stars, a senior officer went outside to see for himself. Observing an object to the north like a star, only larger and brighter, he immediately scrambled an IIAF F-4 to investigate. Approaching the city, the F-4 pilot reported that the brilliant object was easily visible 70 miles away. When approximately 25 nautical miles distant, the interceptor lost all instrumentation and UHF intercom communications. Upon breaking off the intercept and turning towards his home base, all systems returned to normal, as if the strange object no longer regarded the aircraft as a threat. A second F-4 was scrambled 10 minutes after the first. Upon reaching the 25 nautical mile point, the object began rapidly moving away to maintain a constant separation distance while still visible on the radar scope. Visually, it resembled flashing strobe lights arranged in a rectangular pattern and alternating blue, green, red, and orange. Their sequence was so fast that all colors could be seen at once. As the F-4 continued pursuit south of Tehran, a second brightly lit object, about 1/2 to 1/3 the size of the moon, detached from the original UFO and headed straight for the F-4 at a high rate of speed. The pilot attempted to fire an AIM-9 missile at the new object, but was prevented by a sudden power loss in his weapons control panel. UHF and internal communications were simultaneously lost. The pilot promptly initiated a turn and AFG dive to escape, but the object fell in behind the F-4 at 3 to 4 nautical mile distance. Continuing the turn, the pilot observed the second object turn inside of him and then away, subsequently returning to the primary UFO for a perfect rendezvous. The two UFOs had hardly rejoined when a second object detached and headed straight down toward the ground at high speed. Having regained weapons and communication systems, the aircrew watched the third object, anticipating a large explosion when it struck the ground. However, it landed gently and cast a bright light over a 2 to 3 kilometer area. The pilot flew as low over the area as possible, fixing the object's exact location. Upon return to home base, both crewmen had difficulty in adjusting their night vision devices for landing. The landing was further complicated by excessive interference on UHF and a further complete loss of all communications when passing through a 150-degree magnetic bearing from the home base. The inertial navigation system simultaneously fluctuated from 30 to 50 degrees. A civil airliner approaching the area also experienced a similar communications failure but reported no unusual sightings. While on a long final approach, the F-4 crew noted a further UFO, This was described as a cylinder-shaped object about the size of a T-33 trainer with brightly steady lights on each end and a flasher in the middle. It quickly approached and passed directly over the F-4. In answer to the pilot's query, the control tower reported no other air traffic in the area, although they subsequently obtained a visual sighting of the object when specifically directed where to look. The following day, the F-4 crew was flown by helicopter to a location where they believed the object had landed. This turned out to be a dry lake bed, but nothing unusual was noticed. As the helicopter circled off to the west, however, a very noticeable beeper signal was received and eventually traced to a nearby house. They immediately landed and asked the inhabitants if anything strange or unusual had occurred the previous night. Yes, they replied. There had been loud noises and a very bright light, like lightning. The helicopter returned to base and arrangements were made to conduct various tests, such as radiation checks in the vicinity of the house. Unfortunately, the results of such tests have not been reported. Declassified on the 4th of December 1981 by ACS/I HQ USAF.